From the creators who brought you RuPaul's Drag Race and Million Dollar Listing, this is World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Wow Report, counting down the top 10 things that made us go wow. With me is the amazing Tom Campbell, Chief Creative Officer at World of Wonder, James St. James, editor of the Wow Report, and myself, Fenton Bailey, co-founder of World of Wonder. So we are still in Down Under, Tom and I, and James, you're in LA. There you go. Where does it matter where anyone is? Anyway, it's all a remote experience for the rest of us. Let's just start with the countdown then. Number 10, who's dead?
Number 10.
It is another Rest in Perfection, and this one hits home. The original member and founding member of the Supremes, the biggest girl group in history, probably only second is in groups and sales in the 60s to the Beatles. Mary Wilson passed away suddenly in her sleep this week. And actually, we don't know the reason, but she had posted something for Black Lives Matter last week. She looked great. She seemed great. She was 76 years old.
Mary Wilson, I saw that, and it was like 2 or 3 days before she died, and she was perky. She looked fantastic. She was happy. She was talking about new music. She was and it's such a shock that like death can just creep up on you like that. That's the big way.
Life is precious. We should all thank the good Lord every day when we wake up. I can go on and on about the Supremes, as you know. I told Fenton this already, but I literally was watching Supreme's videos on YouTube the day she passed, which I would think was a great coincidence.
I imagine that's every day, Tom.
I do that every single day.
And
in Tom's defense, we were just talking about Mary Wilson in the studio the day before, weren't we? We were like, and you were showing pictures of Mary Wilson. I mean, it's so weird.
That is very weird. You killed her.
There was this picture that came up on a Supremes like fan site that I'd never seen before. And there's a song that they sang, their 5th number 1 in a row after when they first hit their number 1. It's called Back in My Arms Again. And it has a lyric where, how can Mary tell me what to do when she lost her love so true? And Flo, she don't know because the boy she loves is a Romeo. So she's not going to listen to her friend's advice anymore because she's back in her boyfriend's arms again. It's black and white on the film, and I've seen since color pictures where they're wearing this beautiful kind of yellow orangey sarong outfit. And you always see it. And there's this moment, and you see it a lot with Mary Wilson, because when she says, how can Mary tell me what to do? Mary turns to Diana and like shakes her finger. And there's this picture where it's from the side during that same shoot, from the side in full color. You see the side of the backdrop, it's like a very behind the scenes kind of guard. And you see that very moment where Mary is waving her finger. And I felt to me like we had seen, like, I knew that image so well from the front. It's been broadcast for years and years and years. And I thought it was like seeing the Mona Lisa from the side with like a hot dog. It was like, it was such a, so that was what I was responding to the day. But the Supremes, you can't, Mary Wilson, after Diana Ross left the Supremes in 1970, Mary Wilson kept with the Supremes until 1977. She was the only original member to go the entire way when they broke up. And she has really dedicated her life, for better or worse, perpetuating the legend of the Supremes. She had a book out last year about the Supreme fashions. She was always a little bit in Diana Ross's shadow, but she also was a very strong personality and a diva, and you can't underestimate the power that the Supremes had on music and on civil rights. And it's Oprah has said, among so many others, that when she was a little girl in Mississippi and she saw the Supremes on the Ed Sullivan Show, that was the first time she saw black women on television. It was like, I want to be like that, because they've been so badly portrayed as maids and things. So again, I can go on and on. I won't. But Mary Wilson, rest in perfection. Without getting super corny, you kind of hope she's been reunited with Florence and having Flo, who passed away in 1976. So it's a sad day.
I was a little shocked to see. I mean, I guess I wasn't shocked, but that Miss Ross, her Twitter tweeted out condolences to the family and everything like that. And it's just nice to think that, I don't know if it was actually Diana tweeted it or if an assistant did or whatever, but it's nice to think that Diana put everything aside at the end. Or I don't know.
I have to think, I'm being romantic, but I think at the end of life, a lot of petty things that happened in your 20s when you marry or in your 70s don't matter as much anymore. I hope that's the case.
No, that's not the case. Go to my grave. This means the reunion of the Supremes now will only be in heaven.
That's right.
Let's hope Diana Ross gets there.
No, not. She doesn't need to rush. I love Diana Ross too.
Yes. No, I don't. I wasn't shuffling her off, but she might go down, not up.
Oh, she's going up.
Okay. Oh, rest in power, rest in perfection. Mary Wilson, February 8th, 76 years young. James, number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9, there have been some developments in the Armie Hammer case that we talked about the other week. He has a couple more allegations have come forward. Some girls that he has dated have said that there was some abusive nature to the relationship. One girl said that he carved an A on her stomach with a knife and then licked the blood up. And another girl said that he was grooming her to be his perfect slave. There was Brandi Glanville, the Real Housewife of Beverly Hills, tweeted the other day, "Armie, you can have my rib cage. Let's have barbecue." And she got a lot of blowback from that, and she had to apologize publicly for it. But he was also dropped from his agency, WME, in the wake of all this ongoing scandal. But the big story was Sunday night. Twitter went ablaze, as it so often does, with the news that an Armie Hammer, something big was about to drop. And it was going to just blow everybody's mind. It was worse than you thought. It was going to make you sick to your stomach when you find out what the story was. And so everyone is speculating what the story is. Well, at the same time, in Palm Springs, out in the desert, they uncover the human remains of 3 bodies near a construction site. And it turns out Armie Hammer worked on the construction site over the summer. For some reason, he was building a hotel over the summer. And right next to it is where they find the remains of these 3 women. And so everybody is saying online that Armie Hammer killed these women and he, disposed of the bodies, and that's why he took this job at a construction site, which is just all of it. There's so many questions there. Well, the sheriff of San Bernardino County had to issue a statement saying, "We are not considering Armie a suspect at this time. We will let you know as the story develops." Which right there is it like that it got to the police, and they had to issue an international thing saying Armie Hammer did not murder these 3 women. And it's just that thing that we've talked about so often where a story can just take a life of its own online. And yeah,
a lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to put its shoes on.
Exactly. And it's nobody is saying that he's a murderer, but everybody said it online. And you have to wonder.
The thing I find weird about Armie Hammer was working on a construction site.
Well, that's
in Palm Springs.
Yes,
last summer.
It was during COVID. He took a job, and I mean, he has 5 projects. I mean, he's a multi-millionaire. He comes from a billionaire family. Was he slumming? Why was he working there? It is a mystery. Was he
really cooped up and horrible? And was this a way for him to get out of the house? We don't know. There's so much.
Someone also said that it was a friend of his. He was building a hotel, and he just jumped in and said, "I'll help."
Just to get outside and move around. Who knows? We don't know.
I think, James, there's a serious point here about how, it's the lie can spread around the world, the truth, the pants idea. Yeah. There is something uniquely, the distribution system now does, it takes it to another level and another level.
There is no innocent until proven guilty anymore. It is, guilty until proven guilty.
It's mob rule. It's scary.
Yeah.
Right.
And I did, I was sitting at home watching TV, and I got a phone call from my niece who was saying, "Oh my God, Armie Hammer!" Like literally within 3 minutes of the article coming out about the construction site. So I mean, like it happens very fast, and everybody. It was an odd internet moment over the weekend.
Well, that's a good segue actually to move on to number 8.
Number 8.
Framing Britney Spears, because the idea that you are guilty until proven innocent is exactly what is going on in this film made by the New York Times documentaries for the Fox-owned FX network. It is an extraordinary framing job of, I feel, Britney Spears and also her father. And I could not believe watching the documentary and pairing that with the reactions to the documentary. It was sort of completely dissonant to me because everyone's saying, "Oh my God, this documentary's so good. Britney Spears' dad is so evil." You have to consider this. He is painted as a bad person from the beginning. There is no facts about Jamie Spears in it other than the fact that he had problems with alcohol. He had businesses that went bankrupt. He was an absent father. That's in the first 5 minutes. No one substantiates that. Nothing to back it up. It's just a VO line. And he is just demeaned and smeared all the way through until, and the other interesting thing about this documentary is the main interviews are people at the New York Times. They are the main interviewees. Now imagine if World of Wonder made a documentary about someone that we'd never met. Oh, let's make one about Armie Hammer. And the only interviews are James, me, and Tom.
Well, but wait a minute. I do want to say that that's something that has been happening for a long time now. I noticed that on CNN, both CNN and Fox stopped interviewing people on the street during natural disasters or when things happen. They just interview other CNN reporters, and Fox only interviews other Fox News reporters on the scene. And that's something that's been happening for a while.
Okay, that's what Fox does, or maybe even CNN. This is the New York Times. The New York Times holds itself to its own
is such trash lately.
Its own
the last 5 years of the New York Times has been nothing but Maggie Haberman sucking on Donald Trump's teat. I will not have anybody talk about the standard of the New York Times. It has fallen so slow.
I'm not holding up the New York Times, James. I'm saying how the New York Times presents itself and the hypocrisy of the values to which it pretends to aspire. I found this a deeply disturbing, upsetting documentary, and I was incredibly upset by the sort of huge reaction to it of Free Britney. This is also a documentary that begins with Free Britney fans, almost like a QAnon mob, saying what the problem is. It begins that way and it ends that way. And in between, it presents no evidence whatsoever apart from op-ed thinking by 3-4 reporters of the New York Times, none of whom have met her, interviewed her, or done any research or work on the subject at all. It is shocking. Hey, I am not done. And then the other thing is, well, now I've lost my fragile train of thought. But it gives great play to Matt Lauer's interview of Britney Spears carrying the baby in her lap. Excuse me, Matt Lauer? We're gonna like use Matt Lauer as a sort of index of respectability and authenticity and who's gonna really tell you the story. Or Paris Hilton or Justin Timberlake. My God, look what Justin Timberlake did to Janet Jackson. There's none of that. It is an extraordinarily...
The whole point. The whole point is that they were besmirching Justin Timberlake. He comes up as the biggest villain in the piece. He and Diane Sawyer. Can we talk about Diane Sawyer for 1 second?
Because New York Times...
They all drive her to tears. This fragile woman.
The New York Times, for years, undoubtedly wrote trashily about Britney Spears and wrote her off and dismissed her. They participated in the same scrum that they now pretend to be judging in the name of also, but there's an even more serious point under this, which is that Britney Spears is someone who's dealing with mental illness. And that is an incredibly serious condition to be dealing with. And for the New York Times to weigh in with no evidence and question the conservatorship. Look, why do I know this? I've met Britney Spears. I spent weeks with Britney Spears. I made a film about Britney Spears. I've met her father. I've met all the people that the New York Times couldn't be bothered to reach out to, or said didn't want to.
At the very end, is they said that we've reached out to Britney, Jamie, the mother, the brother, blah blah blah, and they said that none of them actually believed that the message actually got to Britney. Or
indeed, in fact, I think that last card is the most incriminating, shameful thing of this whole exercise. What it says is, the New York Times attempted to reach Britney Spears to request our participation. It is unclear whether she ever received this request. Come on, that isn't an editorially neutral card. That is a woot woot, Britney Spears, free Britney Spears, and the conservative. It is an extraordinarily, it's pretending to be, oh, we did this, we did that. But it's a dog whistle.
But I have to say, the Diane Sawyer, the Matt Lauer interview, the interview with the guy from Europe who asked about her breast size, Ed McMahon asking her at 5 years old where her boyfriend is, all of those things are incredibly damning and deserve to be to be shown again in the way that Justin Timberlake weaponized it. They were absolutely true. And what that guy from the Us magazine who took the pictures and did the covers, every single Us magazine for 10 years, in which they lied about her and besmirched her and made her look like she was crazy and this and that. I mean, you have to feel sorry for this girl, and you have to feel sorry for everything. When she breaks down, when she says, please be strong, Britney, be strong, and then she starts sobbing, saying, please, can we turn the camera off? And the camera keeps going and going and going. Diane Sawyer has a history of this, doing it with Whitney Houston. She's done it with a bunch of people. She deserves to be on the hot seat for it. Matt Lauer deserves to be on the hot seat for this, plus everything else he's ever done, as well as Justin Timberlake and Ed McMahon. Ed McMahon is dead, but I don't see where you're saying, this is these people shouldn't be taking stats for it.
Absolutely, Britney Spears was treated appallingly by the media. The New York Times was complicit in that first time around. They leave out their participation in that. They're not talking about their role in it. They're pointing the finger at other people. But more importantly, the conservative was set up to protect Britney, and that Britney is struggling with mental issues, and that her family do love her, and that the idea that Jamie, her dad, is holding her hostage is completely unsubstantiated, and to try and weigh in to dismantle this conservatorship without looking at her mental capacity is shocking to me. It's irresponsible. In fact, it's like, James, it is just more of the same of what you've just rightly pointed out. It is continuing to ill-treat Britney.
But if the fact of the matter is that Jamie is taking advantage of her, then shouldn't we get to the bottom of that and get him off?
It's called the New York Times, and they're supposed to do reporting and research. They're not just supposed to weigh in and interview each other.
I agree with you. The New York Times is wrong to do that, but you're making it sound as if the courts shouldn't be looking into it, or if that it's wrong that Britney was asking for her father to be removed.
I am criticizing this documentary as a irresponsible. It's just a complete
irresponsible further exploitation of Britney Spears.
But it sort of sounds like you're sticking up for Jamie being the conservatorship, and I want to just make it clear that if he is in the wrong, then by all means we should do whatever we can to make it work.
I have to say, I've been silent this whole time. This is the best segment of the WoW Report. I felt like I was in my car driving, listening. But I think all of these issues that they bring up in this documentary may be legitimate and should be researched and should go through a court of law.
But not by the New York Times?
But they didn't do it. They just weighed in his opinion. It's and the fact that they got, usually when you get access to no one, you don't do a documentary. Is that fair to say? If you can't talk to any of the major players. Anyway, we probably need to move on, but I think it's a fascinating point of view, Fenton, because everyone seems to be jumping on the free Britney train. And she's always been the kind of performer like Judy Garland that people project a lot on, right? We've always said that she's this fragile person in this harsh world, and people and fans want to protect her. So
she's a fragile person. James, the fact that she recently turned up to one of the court hearings about her conservatorship barefoot and disheveled suggests she isn't that well. But again, that wasn't in this film. So if you're going to make a film framing Britney Spears, which is proposing that the conservatorship is wrong, you need to investigate that, not just sound off opinions and point the finger at other magazines that have been complicit in persecuting Britney over the years. It's such a muddled.
But don't you think that something like this has gotten the conversation started, and that's a good thing ultimately, whether or not you like the New York Times for the way they did it? It has gotten the entire world to talk about these various ways that she's been treated poorly by the media, and I think is ultimately a good
spin. That's a good spin. You may be right, but it's also just the idea that we have to have things black and white. Villains, bad guys, like it's a Marvel comic, and life is a lot more complicated.
It is. I think, James, it's a bit like getting the conversation started if the New York Times did framing the QAnon, and basically you had New York Times reporters saying, yes, but really Hillary did run a pedophile ring. And, I think, the evidence is there without ever presenting any facts. I think they've just really fanned the flames of an ill-informed, ignorant conversation. So I don't think it's really helped anyone.
Well, I guess that is your segment, and you can say what you want.
I guess we have to take a break. Blake, if you got a question for us.
I do. This one's a little multiple choice, and it's for Black History Month. At the time of her historic bus incident, what was Rosa Parks' occupation? Was she a hospital orderly, a drugstore clerk, a high school cafeteria worker, or a department store seamstress?
Oh, you're listening to Wow Report on Radio Andy, and we'll have the answer right after the break.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
And welcome back to the Wow Report. I'm Fenton here with James and Tom and Blake. You had a question.
Yes, I asked, what was Rosa, at the time of the historic bus incident, what was Rosa Parks' occupation? Was it a hospital orderly, a drugstore clerk, a high school cafeteria worker, or a department store seamstress?
I think she was a department store seamstress.
You're right.
Yeah. Okay, good.
We are counting down the top 10 things that made us go, wow, we've reached number 7.
Number 7.
In these times where there's COVID and so many things happening, in the impeachment trial, it's fun just to attack the super rich. And the New York Times, controversial to this on this show, had an article about 432 Park Avenue, which is one of those huge, tall, skinny buildings that only billionaires live in. It's in a section of New York that's called Billionaires Row, which is just so awful. And the place is a dump, and billionaires are complaining, and it brings me so much joy. I don't know what that means for my karma. I don't care. For instance, the garbage chute.
It whistles or something, doesn't it?
Yes, it's like it's crazy. There's it moves so much that there's haunting sounds all night long.
So steel beams are like creaking, and the wind is going through the hallway. It's sort of an amazing building. It's like they call it the pin needle or something like that. And it's like only one apartment per floor, isn't it? Yes. As it goes up like 3,000 stories. It's just crazy.
Yes, and one of the apartments, the high went for $88 million.
Disgusting.
It's disgusting. And the plumbing's horrible. There's lots of super extensively damaged flooding going on all over the stuff. I want to find the.
Yeah, I heard that because it moves so much, the pipes keep on breaking and flooding floors.
I lived in a skyscraper riverbank for a long time in New York, and I was only on the 14th or 19th floor, something like that. And the way it swayed just there in this big building like that, I can only imagine being on like the 80th floor or something of a tiny little bit. You must literally be your furniture must be sliding around like it's on the Titanic.
You know, those skinny scrapers, though, they do look stunning, don't they? I mean, they make the skyline really, like, dramatic.
Would you ever live there, Fenton? Would you ever live in a giant, high skyscraper way up in the sky?
Yeah, rich as I am, I don't have $88 million for
I have a feeling that they're going to go down in price after this article. This might be a great time to nab one.
It's funny you mention it because Hudson Yards, there's an article about that. Hudson Yards, you know, the multi-billion-dollar development is sitting empty.
Yeah, I saw a video of that. Yeah,
and I think that they're gonna, you know, it seems that like they might be, the demand for these things might be falling away. And but weirdly, you know, the Donald Trump's first project in Manhattan was the Grand Hyatt, right, by Grand Central. Right, yeah. He covered the whole thing in mirrors. You know, that was his first. They're going to demolish that, and they're building a 1,646-foot tower, which is only 100 feet shorter than One World Trade. It's going to be massive. It's going to be open in 2030.
But is the whole city bankrupt? You know, I mean, it's all going to just be like places for homeless people to live. I mean, they're going to open it up for, you know, I mean, there are no rich in New York anymore, are there?
Well, there's rich people in the world, and they all buy real estate, and who knows what money laundering goes on. But I hope whatever, you know, so the elevators don't work, the plumbing doesn't work, the garbage chute makes noise, and everyone's really unhappy. And billionaires on Billionaires Row in 422 Park.
Thank you. Go. All right, let's go on to number 6, James.
Number 6.
In 1997, I read a book called The Lives of Monster Dogs, The Lives of the Monster Dogs. And it was one of the best books I'd ever read. It was a novel by a woman named Kirsten Backus, I think her name was. And I had been, for the last 20 years, I've been trying to remember what the title of this book was and trying to find it again. And I finally, the other day, went, oh my God, and realized what it was. And I got it and I reread it. And I'm rereading it right now. And it's this hypnotically written, lyrically written book. And it's set in the year 2008, which is the future at the time. And it's in New York City. And all of a sudden there appears this group of upright walking, talking dogs, these monster dogs with prosthetic hands, and they're dressed in 19th century finery with top hats and tails and bustle skirts and pearls and lorgnettes. And they speak in this very genteel manner of speaking that suggests they're from the 19th century. And they become instant superstars. And they're on the cover of Vogue and Vanity Fair. And everywhere they go, they're the most glamorous. Crowds are following them wherever they go. And people are cheering them on and everything. Well, it turns out that they were science experiments from a mad scientist in the 19th century, a Prussian scientist. And when he died, their city that he built for them was cut off from the rest of the world for 100 years. And so when they finally got out, that's when they come to New York City and they try and like become part of civilization again, but it doesn't work. And they decide to build this giant fantastical castle on the Lower East Side, and then they're going to barricade themselves in for all, and they're dying of this weird disease. There's a lot going on, but it's absolutely fantastic, and it's told through diary entries and interviews and gossip columns, and it's like a piecemeal of this existence of these glamorous talking dogs, and I just think that everybody needs to read it. It's fantastic.
It does sound fantastic. Does it make you want to have a dog?
Well, I've always wanted a dog. I'm a dog person. I would I disappear for days at a time. They die in my house. I couldn't have a dog. But that's neither here nor there. I do think that somebody needs to make this into a movie because it just sounds like a perfect movie. You just see these glamorous dogs in these fabulous, big picture hats with veils and their hands that are going like this. It just seems very cinematic to me.
This is number 5.
Number 5.
It is a book. It's called The Velvet Mafia. And the subtitle is The Gay Men Who Ran the Swinging 60s.
Oh.
And this is, it's amazing to me actually that someone hasn't written a book about it before, but here's the thing. In Britain, after the war, it was very bleak. And in America, you had Elvis and rock and roll and all that malarkey. In the UK, you didn't have that. And people in the UK started looking around and thinking, why can't we have that? A long story, very short. A guy called Larry Parness decided to create British stars. Billy Fury, Tommy Steele, Marty Wilde, none of those are their real names. He minted one star after another. He basically was the man who invented pop. And when I say pop, the thing about pop is it wasn't just the music, it was also partnered with television. This was a time that the BBC had just started airing. They began to have the very first music shows. And I think you can trace this really interesting line that pop actually comes from Britain. Yes, rock and roll is US, pop is British. And of course, the most famous, I like to call them the Fat Controllers, but they were all these gay managers. The most famous is Brian Epstein, who discovered and managed the Beatles, of course.
Brian Epstein was gay? I never knew.
Someone I know personally, Simon Napier Bell, incredibly flamboyant, fabulous musician. He discovered Mark Bolan. He went on to manage Wham. He took Wham to China. Robert Stigwood, who's American, of course. Ken Pitt, who managed Eveybody. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so someone's written a book about it called The Velvet Mafia.
Robert Stigwood's Australian. Continue.
Oh, well, thank you very much for that correction. Yes, right. Well, anyway, if you're a manager looking after a musician, chances are you're gay.
And then in the 90s, it was Randy and Fenton who managed RuPaul.
And they're gay.
Totally gay.
But it's really interesting. And I think what's interesting is the way that music and television very early on got together. And so sort of, because pop isn't just about it isn't just the music, it isn't just the ability to sing or to play, it's also this ability to package and to present a visual side of it. So I recommend it, yeah. And I suppose in a way you can see, I suppose the connection to Britney is you can see the beginnings, this is the sort of the beginnings of that confection of pop that, you know, got more and more sophisticated. Who was the manager who managed Backstreet Boys and NSYNC?
Oh, Lou Pearlman.
Yeah, you know, there you go. Another classic figure. I should probably say that the managers of Britney are not gay. I should just say that before.
Not that we know of.
No, not that we know. All right.
What's the name of the book again?
The name of the book is The Velvet Mafia, The Gay Men Who Ran the Swinging 60s.
Love it.
Uh-huh. All right. Let's take a break. Oh, by the way, before we take a break, I just got to tell you, Kino Lorber has just acquired North American distribution to Wojnarowicz, the Chris McKim documentary. Wojnarowicz, Fuck You, Faggot Fucker is the full title, which will be released in theaters and VOD on March 19th.
Congratulations to Chris McKim. That's so exciting.
I know. He's made such a good film. It's so powerful. And, you know, it's just so relevant today because Wojnarowicz was all about speaking out about AIDS and the government's indifference and cruelty and what he called the one tribe nation. And here we are, or have been recently again, with another pandemic and another presidency.
And you managed to interview one of the biggest stars on the planet, one of the superstars of 2021, Fran Lebowitz, who is interviewed in it. And you knew that at the time you interviewed her that she would take off the way she has this year.
Exactly. All right.
The other Britney Spears. Go on.
Fran Lebowitz is the other Britney Spears.
She's so popular right now.
Right, exactly. Oh, I miss Britney. Blake, you have a question?
I do. I have another multiple choice for Black History Month.
Oh, good.
And this one I didn't even know. So, did you know that rapper Tupac Shakur was a student at the Baltimore School of Performing Arts?
I did not know.
Well, he was. And he took which of these classes? Hip hop and poetry, theater and modern dance, music appreciation and film, or ballet and poetry?
Oh, I know the answer to this one. We'll be right back after the break with the answer.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the WoW Report. I'm Fenton here with James St. James and Tom Campbell. We're counting down the top 10 things of the week that made us go wow.
Oh.
But first, Blake, you had a question for us.
Yes, I do. Rapper Tupac Shakur actually.
I love the way you say that. Just say that one more time. It's just very Arkansas.
Rapper Tupac Shakur. He attended the Baltimore School of Performing Arts. Which classes did he take? Was it hip hop and poetry, theater and modern dance, music appreciation and film, or ballet and poetry?
I'm going to say modern dance, but do you think it was the fourth one, Fenton?
Ballet and poetry.
Ballet and poetry. I'm going to say ballet and poetry because it's the most out there one. That's the only reason why I'm saying it.
He did take ballet and poetry. Now, another little trivia. Guess who else went to that school and he met in 1985?
Kanye West?
Jada Pinkett Smith.
Oh,
They actually used to date.
I did know that. I do remember that one.
So there you go.
I'm still floored about your everybody working at the department store. Remember? The other day you had like 5 stars that were all working in Brooklyn.
At the Sears call center, Salt and Peppa, Brittany Clay, and Martin Lawrence.
I think about that every day.
Oh, yeah, crazy.
James, that could be a book.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Stars who knew each other when.
Yeah. All right, we're counting down the top 10 things that made us go wow. We've reached number 4.
Number 4.
Oh, that's me again. I wanted to know, what did you guys think of the Weeknd's performance at the Super Bowl? James?
Well, I don't understand the Weeknd. I just don't get him. Every single one of his songs is just 3 notes in different orders. He never uses anything but the same 3 notes over and over again. There's a big... What?
That is the definition of pop music. It's 3 notes.
Okay, there you go. He's Michael Jackson light to me. It seems like he's just doing a Michael Jackson impersonation. I don't get the plastic surgery thing that he's been doing lately. I don't get the commentary there. It's just he doesn't seem to be the vessel for it. I don't know. I don't get it, so I'm not the one to ask.
Well, I will say I've never been that big of a fan of the Weeknd until this pandemic hit, and I was driving to Michelle Visage's once, sometimes twice a day, out in
beware of dropping names.
Like 40 minutes away, but it was for our show that we did. Where's Your Head On? And his album had just come out, so I listened to it on the way there and on the way back a few times, and I absolutely fell in love with it.
Okay.
There are so many great songs on this album. I love the visions, or the imagery. It's supposed to tell a story, and that's what no one gets. Like, they're like, why is everyone wearing bandages on their head? And they ask this every time he performs, like no one else has had a gimmick. I just don't get, and I don't understand. He spent $7 million of his own money on this halftime show, which I think was brilliant, considering that they didn't have the fans on the field and all that stuff. Why did everyone hate it so much?
I mean, I love the plastic surgery. I just want to know more. Tell me more. Like, do you know,
Yeah, there was a thing. Let me find it. Hang on. Sorry. Okay. Why the Weeknd's dancers had bandages on their faces during the Super Bowl halftime show. This is from Glamour. And it says, it's all part of the story the Weeknd's telling with his most recent videos. The basic storyline is this: the Weeknd trips while partying in Vegas. Then he gets even more hurt and decapitated. In his music video for Too Late, his head is attached to another person's body. We then saw him at several award shows, blah, blah, blah. And he says that he does this. This is what he says. The significance of the entire head bandages is reflecting on the absurd culture of Hollywood celebrity and people manipulating themselves for superficial reasons to please and be validated.
Okay.
Can I weigh in, please?
Yes, please.
I think my critiques are best when I haven't actually seen the thing I'm critiquing. I did not see. I'm overseas, time change, busy. I did not see the halftime show for the first time in a long time. I know it's online, but I'm very busy. Did I mention I'm very busy? But so just watching the reaction, can I remind us every year how bad everybody thought Madonna's halftime show was? Watch that online. It's a piece of art. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's something about that particular event and live events in general where people just get on.
Remember what they did with J-Lo and Shakira last year? How they slut shamed them for shaking.
And that was an exciting and vibrant thing. Yeah. I said this years ago. I saw Diana Ross. I happened to be invited to the Super Bowl. The one time I had no idea that Diana Ross was the halftime show where she took off in a helicopter.
Oh, I find it hard to believe.
I didn't know, but it was amazing. But I'm just saying, when you're actually there, the other thing that no one cares about is when you're actually, it's a football field, and then 10 minutes later, it's a pyrotechnic stage performance with thousands of people dancing in unison and doing things, and then a half hour later, it's a football field. I mean, what they do for us, what they present to us is so amazing. And people are kind of like, yeah, I like my chocolate, a little bit darker, or I like nuts in my chocolate. Yeah,
Well, I do know that one of the complaints is that the gays always feel like it's their time. And you had Beyonce, you had Shakira and J-Lo, you had Madonna, you always had Lady Gaga, you always had Katy Perry. It's always very gay centric, and that the Weeknd is not as gay friendly, and so the gays were a little upset.
I think the gays now have RuPaul's Drag Race as their Super Bowl, so now you can't co-opt the Super Bowl. I'm just teasing. The gays get plenty. Well, people are too negative. Enjoy. Take a deep breath. Enjoy the millions of dollars of entertainment that's flowing by your eyes for free. Spoiler alert, if you like halftime shows and gay performers, All Star 6 might have a challenge that excites you.
All right. Well, I'll post the link to the Weeknd Super Bowl performance on the Wow Report so you can watch it, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to number 3. James.
Number 3.
A trailer for a documentary dropped that I want to talk about because it absolutely is a fascinating story. It's called The Most Beautiful Boy in the World, and it's a documentary about Bjorn Anderson. Tom, does that name ring a bell to you?
No, I thought it was about me, and I didn't know about it. Keep going. No, keep going.
It was Bjorn Anderson was cast in the movie Death in Venice in 1971 when he was 15 years old. And the Death in Venice, of course, is based on a novella by Thomas Mann, and it tells the story of an old writer, an older man who goes to visit Venice at the turn of last century. And while he's on the beach, he spies this 14-year-old boy who is just the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. And he becomes obsessed with this boy's beauty, which he likens to Michelangelo's David, and he starts following the boy around Venice, and he basically stalks him for the entire book and the entire movie. And it's Dirk Borgard in the movie, and he's following Marissa Berenson is the mother, and it's all Edwardian fashions. But anyway, Luciano Visconti, who is the director of the movie, who always does the most amazing movies of all time, he had this casting call for The Most Beautiful Boy in the World. And it was like the casting call for Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind. He saw thousands of boys around the world, and you see him, the boys are parading in front of him shirtless as he's like looking at all these 13-year-old boys, and he's like, take off your shirt, now turn around, let me see your teeth. It's just so gross what he's doing. And he finally alights upon Bjorn Anderson, who is just saying this androgynous gazelle of a boy. Just really, when you say the most beautiful boy in the world, this boy is just, cheekbones and just pouty lips and just everything that this pedophile would want in a 14-year-old boy. And when the movie comes out, he becomes this instant superstar. And when he goes to Tokyo, it's like the Beatles. Wherever he goes, it is like he is called the most beautiful boy in the world. And Then you switch to now, and you see him 50 years later, and he looks like Gandalf the Grey. He's got gray long hair and a gray beard, and he's wearing a gray robe, and he's sort of like hunchbacked, and he's talking about how to this day he is still grappling with the idea that he was sexualized and fetishized as a prepubescent boy by the media, by the film community, everywhere he went. For 10 years, it was like he was dragged to gay bars when he was 14 and like put on stage and like ogled and hooted and hollered at. And he tells the story about how he still to this day has a problem with it. And it looks like it's just a fascinating movie. It came out in the end of January, and it's I don't know if it's on demand. I don't think it is. But
it's not. I think it premiered at the Sundance Film Festival.
Oh,
but
okay.
It's interesting, isn't it, James? Because in a way, it touches. It's Britney adjacent.
It is.
Really,
that same. We have a leitmotif in this show today where it's just. And if you've never seen Death in Venice, it's creepy and it's awful, but it's one of the most beautifully filmed movie of all time.
Absolutely.
This thing is a documentary.
It's a documentary about the boy in the making of the movie Death in Venice in 1971 with Visconti.
Right, thank you.
Yes. Gosh, the whole film is like a sort of a reverie, and the book is fabulous too.
Yes,
you know,
yes. It's meant to be a meditation on growing older and how the chasing of youth and the chasing, like the passing of the baton from one, and about art and what is beauty in art and everything. It's beautifully written by Thomas Mann, but it also is about an aging pedophile lusting after a young boy, and
I mean, I don't know if he's a pedophile so much as because he's got this case of writer's block, right? And it's what Thomas Mann is trying to do is sort of evoke this idea of classical eternal beauty, right? But there's a great image in the film at the end where the old man who's lingered too long in Venice and this disease sort of is ill, and the dye of his hair trickles down his face.
Giuliani.
It is exactly. Giuliani has given the film new currency because of that similarity.
That's one of the creepy things too at the very end when he's talked into, like, he's trying to make himself look more presentable for the boy, I guess. And he goes and he gets his hair dyed and he has this makeup caked on, and it's in this plague-ridden, era of the heat, and it's all melting and his face is melting. It's like Baby Jane Hudson is what it is. It's really an indelible image.
Right. It's an iconic moment. All right, number two.
Number two.
Going to continue the theme of old men with dyed black hair. In this case, it is the media mogul Robert Maxwell, who died in, I think, 91 or 92. He was a rival of Rupert Murdoch's. He was a Czechoslovakian. He was the son of an animal skin trader from Czechoslovakia. His parents and grandparents and siblings were shot by the Nazis during the war, and he became a war hero. But Robert Maxwell really found fame as a media baron in the 80s and early 90s. I'm telling you all this because there's a new book out called Fall, The Mystery of Robert Maxwell by John Preston, who's one of my favorite nonfiction authors. He wrote The Dig. We talked about The Dig last week. He also wrote A Very British Scandal about Jeremy Thorpe homosexual affair and scandal in the 70s, which we've talked about here before, which was the Hugh Grant series, the fabulous Hugh Grant series. And Robert Maxwell, there have been biographies about him before, but this is a humdinger. It begins in 1991 with this beautiful 4-story yacht coming up the Hudson and mooring in New York Harbor. And on board is Robert Maxwell, who is like 300 pounds. And he said, oh, by the way, I should tell you, the name of the yacht is Lady Ghislaine.
Oh!
Because Robert Maxwell is the father of Ghislaine Maxwell. Talk about burying.
Yes, way to bury the lead.
But the reason in 1991 is that he's in New York is that he has bought the Daily News, which then was in the midst of a terrible bankruptcy, and everyone was being fired, and it was very violent. There were like the unions were burning the delivery trucks, and
Wait, this is in New York in the early 80s? Okay.
He rescued the Daily News in the early 90s. And this was the pinnacle of his success. He was really, to buy a New York tabloid paper. See, Rupert Murdoch had beaten him time and time again in these competitions to acquire properties. Finally, Maxwell gets the New York Daily News. And within 18 months, he's dead. Because what turned out is that his whole empire was a bloated, corrupt thing. He died, I think it was about £1 billion were missing from his company. And he had raided the pension plan of his employees to keep up this whole illusion lifestyle. It was like he was managing a giant Ponzi scheme, basically. And
aren't they all, though, eventually?
I guess so. I mean, that was juggling debt, robbing Peter to pay Paul, or what is it? Paul, Mary?
Yeah.
And long story short, he dies. He falls off the back of, this is the thing. He dies. He's on his yacht in the Mediterranean. And they're looking for him the next day, and he's gone. And the question is, did he fall overboard? Did he commit suicide? Was he pushed? Because he had connections to Mossad all the way through his career.
Did he escape? Did he escape?
Oh, is he still living on an island somewhere with Hitler and Lindbergh baby?
I don't believe so, because they found his body the next day floating in the water.
My point exactly.
And actually, Tom, to your point, he was buried very, very quickly on the Mount of Olives, which isn't, where in Israel, which isn't where, you got to be someone to get buried on the Mount of Olives,
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, but were you able to glean any backstory for Ghislaine that made you realize why she is the way she was?
Well, the answer to that is yes and no. One, I haven't finished the book. Two, I actually met, unlike New York Times doing these Britney Spears things, I actually met Robert Maxwell. When I was a student at Oxford, the ISIS magazine, which was the university magazine, was in terrible financial trouble. And I had become editor of the magazine and thought it was a good idea to go to Robert Maxwell because he had this baronial hall just outside of Oxford and ask him for some money and support. And I'll never forget, was ushered into a room that must have been 100 feet long and had a table 50 feet long. And at the end of it was Robert Maxwell. And as I walked towards him, there was a pile of files on the table, but they were sort of on the edge. And as I walked past, I brushed them and they fell to the floor. Not a good way to begin a meeting.
Did you get the money?
I stooped down to pick up the files and he said, "Leave it." And I being far too polite and British, I kept on picking up and he shouted at the top of his head, "I said leave it!" So from there, the meeting went from bad to worse. But long story short, he said that he would put money in and save the magazine, but that he had to have editorial control. And this may surprise you, but I had the wherewithal and the scruples to say thanks, but no thanks. So.
But it's interesting that the Daily News is so left-leaning as opposed to the New York Post, which is so right-leaning. And I wonder if his politics probably didn't match up, but he just wanted to fuck with Rupert Murdoch and go the opposite direction.
He was obsessed with Rupert Murdoch, but he was very left-wing. He also owned the Daily Mirror. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But he was a frightful person, had a terrible temper, completely ignored the existence of Ghislaine Maxwell, because I think the day after she was born, his oldest son was in a terrible car crash and was in a coma. So the family was blighted by tragedy. And Ghislaine was completely ignored until, I think, age 12. She confronted her parents and stamped her foot and said, "I exist, damn it." So
that'll do it. That'll lend to some trauma, I suppose.
Right. Exactly. I think, and I have to say that afternoon I spent at Headington Hill Hall was one of the most terrifying, dark, bleak experiences.
And you've had some terrifying, dark, and bleak experiences in your life, I know.
Exactly. All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll reveal the number one thing that made us go wow this week.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the Wow Report. I'm Fenton with James and Blake and Tom. What was the number one thing this week then?
Number one.
We were going to do two things. It was going to be sort of a news of the weird situation, I believe. What were the two things? There's
there's the guy the lawyer who was a cat on his Zoom call.
Yes, I don't know if you saw that one, Fenton, where you did.
I did. I keep playing it over and over. I was like, thank goodness there's a meme to replace the Bernie Sanders meme. I feel
oh yeah, because there's the Real Housewife, and she's shouting at the cat, and she's like, "You're a cat," and he's like, "I'm not a cat," and that sort of went back and forth. But the other big story.
Speaking of memes, there's tons of memes for this. Go ahead, James.
Oh, the Gorilla Glue girl and the tragedy of the Gorilla Glue girl, how she was doing her hairdo and she decided to put it down with Gorilla Glue and put a ponytail on, and then she couldn't get it off. And she's still like a month later. How long has it been?
It's been like a month, and she's gone to the ER, and they told her
didn't help.
Yeah, they couldn't help. They told her Gorilla Glue told her to use rubbing alcohol. That didn't work. So I heard she's thinking of suing them because it says it's all purpose. So she thought that.
Well, I do know that she got a phone call from a LA plastic surgeon who said that he could probably help her and he was going to fly her out and do it pro bono.
This is terrifying.
I hope she learned a lesson.
Well, I certainly learned a lesson just following the story.
Yeah.
I will not use Gorilla Glue on my hair.
And always use Gorilla Glue because that shit sticks.
It's true.
I just have a hard time understanding how all purpose can then be turned into put it in your hair. It doesn't.
I don't.
Well, no, I mean, I know there were times in my life where every drag queen has glued things on their hair. I had two ponytails that I was bald and I would super glue the ponytails on. And I remember I was at a club and some evil queen came and went like that and ripped it off. And I had a giant scar. I mean, I bled. I mean, it was just, and I used to glue sequins and rhinestones and stuff to my head with super glue. And then I'd be high and pick them off. And I would have like big circles, scars.
But you're not suing super glue, are you? Because you knew
my own damn fault. I was stupid enough to have a few cocktails and decide to super glue things. And I know like all the drag queens super glue those big earrings to their ears and rip them off every time.
I think the thing that she may have been confused about, I read that she usually uses Got to Be glue. That's the name of the hair brand stuff that she uses. So maybe she just didn't know that glue meant glue.
Or she saw the G and thought she just misread it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was our number one.
Blake, your dog is barking, so we got to get off.
I know he is. We were talking about sophisticated dogs. I think I've got one.
Right? He knows the show is over. He's like, I've had enough of this shit. Thanks for tuning into the Wow Report. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, James. Thank you, Blake. You can listen to previous episodes on our YouTube channel, Wow Presents. In the meantime, same time, same place next week. And until then, go out, wear your mask, stay safe, and do something that makes the world go wow.